Hollywood, and Disney in particular, has been ruining stories with wokeness for quite some time, but now some really big figures in Hollywood are starting to notice, and they're speaking out about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Alright guys, so as you probably know, the Cannes Film Festival has been taking place as of late, and we got a clip out of the Cannes Film Festival from George Lucas responding to seemingly a question about female heroes within Star Wars. And it seems like George Lucas has caught on to something that they've been doing, not only within the Star Wars franchise, but just in Hollywood in general, where people are starting to insert their political ideology into storytelling, and they're girl bossifying everything, but in the wrong way. And he decided to highlight the actual girl bosses that have existed throughout the Star Wars series since the very beginning. Let's roll the clip.
He said, there's no women in the movies. I said, who do you think the heroes are in those films? What do you think Princess Leia was? She is the head of the rebellion. She's the one that's taking this young kid that doesn't know anything and this boisterous, I know everything guy who can't do anything, trying to save the rebellion with these clowns. She's the hero of the movie. And it's the same thing with Queen Amidala. Even though she has Jedi on her side, she was still a hero prime mover. You can't just put a woman in pants and expect her to be a hero. They can wear dresses, they can wear whatever they want. It's their brains and their ability to think and plan and be logistical. That's what the hero is.
Ooh, so it seems like George Lucas might be subtly calling out some people within Hollywood by saying you can't just throw pants on a woman and make her act like a man to have her be a girl boss. It's about the mind, it's about the leadership, it's about the logistics of the matter. And he might be calling out Star Wars' newest director, Leslie Headland, who was responsible for Star Wars The Acolyte. Now, she made it very clear that she wanted to tell a female queer story.
When I saw Frozen as a grown-ass woman, I cried through the entire movie. There was just something about the relationship between the sisters, the like de-villainization of the classic kind of fairy tale bad guy, you know, the concept of true love being between two sisters and not a heterosexual relationship. Like it just destroyed me completely. And I thought, gosh, you know, I would love to make something like this that is, you know, for lack of a better term, Disney, meaning it's something that like my parents would have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person.
Gotcha.
But I would have been able to understand as a queer person. And I think I would have had a completely different life. And so I really was inspired by it and was like, God, I would love to make a story like this. And so when I was developing this original idea to pitch to Kathleen, I thought, well, you know, it can't just be that, you know, when you're pitching Star Wars, you have to pull from what, you know, George was also interested in.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. She wanted to tell a queer story, and instead of just going out and creating something of her own, she decided that what needed to be done was a little sprinkling of the original IP and source material from Star Wars. So instead of actually telling a Star Wars story, she's telling a queer, politicized version of Star Wars, where she takes some of the background that has been created throughout the many decades that this has been a popular franchise and just slaps it into something that she wants for her political messaging. And I honestly think that's why we're getting all these girl boss heroes that don't actually feel like heroes at all. It's this sort of superficial view that we have of feminism and fighting the patriarchy that has ushered its way into movies, but doesn't tell a real story and doesn't actually represent what true feminine heroes are. And as George Lucas said, Star Wars already had those feminine heroes. They've just come to be ignored because they don't fit today's standards of what feminism looks like. But instead of listening to, I don't know, the legacy of George Lucas or the words coming out of George Lucas's mouth, Leslie Headland decides to double down on her view and what she's done with the Star Wars franchise. She says, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been. I stand by my empathy for fans, but I want to be clear. Anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, I don't consider a fan. So this random woman who has entered the Star Wars franchise as a director now gets to dictate who she considers to be a fan of something that she did not create. It truly baffles me. And this comes on the heels of a Kathleen Kennedy quote. You know, Kathleen Kennedy, the woman who has almost single-handedly ruined Disney. She says that a lot of women in Star Wars struggle with fan attacks because of the fan base being so male-dominated. And the quote from Kathleen Kennedy comes on the heels of another quote from a Star Wars director by the name of Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy saying that she wants to make men uncomfortable.
I like to make
make men uncomfortable. I enjoy making men uncomfortable.
I'm gonna go out on a strong limb here and say that none of these women truly care about the storytelling that is at the center and heart of the Star Wars franchise. They care more about the political messaging that they want to convince the audience of. But guess what, girl boss? The audience isn't falling for it. You know who else isn't falling for it? George R.R. Martin, another significant figure within Hollywood who is of course responsible for the Game of Thrones series. George R.R. Martin has been calling out producers and screenwriters who change things from books, says Culture Crave on X. Quote, everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take stories and, quote, make them their own, end quote. It does not seem to matter whether the source material was written by Stan Lee, Ian Fleming, Roald Dahl, Ursula K. Le Guin, J.R.R. Tolkien, Mark Twain, Jane Austen, or, well, anyone. No matter how major the writer is, no matter how great the book, there always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do better, eager to take the story and improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better, though. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. And George R.R. Martin is absolutely correct. It honestly seems to be a little bit of a nod to Star Wars, Wonka, Lord of the Rings, Snow White, and probably that last season or a couple seasons of Game of Thrones if we're being honest with ourselves. I'd like to liken these stories and classic tales or good books to a really good sandwich. And you know what happens when somebody takes a really good sandwich and puts a little bit of in it? It becomes a sandwich.
Maybe you can get him to eat a sandwich.
George Lucas noticed that, George R.R. Martin noticed that, and now we have yet another figure in Hollywood who is starting to chime in, and that's John Musker of Disney. He's a famous animator who's responsible for films that you know and love, like Aladdin and The Little Mermaid. John Musker, when talking about Disney, is quoted as saying, I think they need to do a course correction a bit in terms of putting the message secondary behind entertainment and compelling story and engaging characters. Who'da thunk when telling a story, the story should come first? And of course, that beloved story that we all know and love, The Little Mermaid, that he was largely responsible for as an animator, was recently recreated, and this is what he had to say about the film. Quote, they didn't play up the father-daughter story, and that was the heart of the movie in a way. And the crab, you could look at live animals in a zoo, and they have more expression. End quote. So Disney sacrificed the storyline, the engaging characters, as he put it earlier, and even the animation to just give you some messaging in a story. And if you watched the newest Little Mermaid and didn't think that there was messaging, trust, there was. That movie was girl bossified. They played down a lot of the narrative. And as John Musker said, the real heart of the story was that father-daughter relationship between Ariel and King Triton. And that fell by the wayside. So if three of the biggest figures in Hollywood are coming forward to tell you that we have an issue, and these are men that have created timeless stories that we are always going to come back to, shouldn't we listen? Because I gotta be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I watched a timeless piece of entertainment or heard a story that I feel like is going to become a classic or something that I'm going to want to show my kids when they grow up. But hey, you know, it's three white men sounding the alarm and saying we have a problem within Hollywood where they're creating literal garbage. So I guess we better not listen. It's probably just their privilege talking. You know what? Yeah, let's just totally ignore them and continue feeding the audience things that they tell us time and time again they don't want to see. They'll have to eat it if it's all we make, right?
God, I hate it.
I don't care whether you hate it. You said you do it.
All right.
Eat it. Eat it.
And if they say they don't like it, or they don't show up to the movie theater and we flop at the box office, you know the script. Accuse them of homophobia, racism, transphobia, Islamophobia, xenophobia, misogyny, and if you're unsure, just take the root of the word that you're concerned about and tack phobia or ism at the end. Anyways, all jokes aside, I think it's interesting that within the week we've seen three very prominent figures come out with a very similar message. And the message is we have literally lost the plot, pun intended, when it comes to storytelling in Hollywood. And I don't think all hope is lost. Clearly, there are still very good storytellers that are living and breathing amongst us, but the industry just isn't supporting or backing them. I think it's time, though, that the Kathleen Kennedys and Leslie Headlands of the world start to listen up, not only to these three men, but to the general audience that is telling you exactly what they taste in the sandwiches you're serving them. But those are just my thoughts. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, I encourage healthy debate, so duke it out, but do so respectfully. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. And if you got this far in the video, drop a little sandwich emoji. in the comments down below. I'll go through and give them a like. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Yeah, you better.